this phrase, I'm fine, is such a disconnecting, irritating phrase that we all do at times. We all do it. And so we're laughing because we're like, well, we've done this before, right? But
yeah, I have this client right now that I'm working with, this couple that I'm working with, and they're super avoidant. It's like they're hilarious, and they'll probably watch us and laugh, but that's our joke. Whenever he says he's avoidant by nature, by attachment systems. And so the first time I met him, he had said, I'm fine like 15 times. And I'm like, okay, so from now on, when you say I'm fine, I'm gonna take that as fuck off. He was like, and I was like, because that's what it means, right? And he was like, yeah, you're right. I actually never thought of that before. So now when he says it's fine, we all burst out laughing in the session. It's
I love it.
It's automatic. It's his defense system. And he just says it because he's super avoidant. Yes. So it's fine. No, it's fine. So it's our joke now. So now they take it home.
I love it.
It's so great.
Welcome to the Relationship Psychologist Podcast, a place where we dive deep into all things relationships. I'm Dayna Mullen.
And I'm Alicia Hinger, and we are soul sisters, besties, and psychologists who are on a mission to change the culture of relationships.
Each week, we will discuss our expertise in the field of psychology, interview experts, spiritual leaders, and real people. Our goal in every episode is to give our listeners tools to implement in their lives today.
This podcast is not therapy, nor should it be a substitute for therapy, but instead we're here to motivate, support, and guide your conscious journey in this life.
The best way to support our podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
Thanks so much for joining. Let's dive in.
Welcome.
Are we on?
We're live.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
So good. How are you?
Good. I'm great.
Awesome.
Yes. It was a busy week so far, but now I'm with you. So it's great. You know what? We're talking about self-regulation. Yes. And even it's funny because when I hear your voice and see your face, I'm like, I feel better.
I know. Me too. I think we've had so many experiences together that it's like when we see each other, we're like, oh, you're just like calmness and fun. And so, unless you're stressed out, but that's a very different energy. I could sense that quick when you're stressed out, but
and you're like, what do you need?
Instantly. It's like, which is I feel like what we try and teach our couples too, right? We're like, when one of you is in need, whoever's on fire first, tend to that person, be like, okay, whoa, I'm dropping whatever I need because you're in distress. Like, let me take care of you.
Exactly. Yes. So we're going to do self-regulation today. This is a big topic. And in our Instagram feeds, and I think maybe on YouTube, I'm not sure, but I saw some comments from our last couple of podcasts with some great ideas, and they're all good. And so we want to get to all those other ideas around different personality disorders and breakup and divorce and dating. There's lots of good, requests in there. The reason I think this one's important today, it feeds off of what we talked about in the last couple of podcasts about attachment systems and communication. But actually, I kind of like to think of like what's happening in our offices right now is often kind of the theme of what people are needing to hear. And so this has been a topic every day this week and last week. I don't know about you, but I've had like literally I said to a client yesterday, I'm going to make a podcast tomorrow for you. So listen to it because you're the 15th person this week that's asked about self-regulation.
Yeah, it is funny. And I feel like you and I consult so much. So we're always, I don't know if it's like, we're in like the same wavelength, but I'm the same way. I just had 2 sessions and that's what we were talking about the whole time. One was an alcoholic who's dealing with stuff and it's all self-regulation and he's quit and dealing with that. And another was a partner. Like we said in our last podcast, 93% of communication is nonverbal, which is arousal.
Arousal. Exactly. Okay. So let's use that term. What is self-regulation? How do you describe it to your clients?
I usually distinguish between self-regulation and co-regulation. Yeah. So I'll usually kind of have a little discussion around, even just in the moment, are you aware of your internal state right now? Are you aware of your body and your face? And if I ask that, people are usually like, no. And so I'll just say, so for a sec, just notice. And if you want to close your eyes, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But what does your face look like right now? What do you notice inside of your body right now when you just actually feel it? And they'll be like, well, I notice I'm grinding my teeth. I can feel clenching. I notice that my throat is tight. Yeah. My shoulders are tight. My heart is beating really fast. My stomach kind of feels like it's in knots. Yeah. My hands are tight and I just feel tight. And I'm like, okay, so just be aware of that. This is your current arousal state. This is where your body has tracked something and it's expressing that. Yeah. So just notice that. You noticing that is a way that you can now start to regulate yourself. Your partner is sensing that and is getting into a threat mode. So you be aware of that. And if you can downregulate yourself, if you can be aware of it, so you can get some skills to downregulate, now you can create safety and security and connection to be able to talk again, which is then the co-regulation, right? So if your partner is in a calm state, they can be aware of you and say, oh, I notice tightness in your face. I notice that you look stressed. Something's going on. And then they can co-regulate with you to help you bring you down regulate again.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a ton
I'll usually
to unpack there. That's a lot.
Yeah, I know.
For people to take in. So let's unpack a bit of that. No, it's great. It's so great. So one of the pieces you said about paying attention to your body and what's happening in your face. I'm actually laughing because yesterday I had a couple in my office and they were so unaware. Was yesterday, the day before. And so they're so cute. And so I was like, can I just tape what's happening? Like, can I just give up my phone and videotaping? They're like, okay. So I just taped them for a bit and then I paused and was like, look. And then she was like, oh, I'm like, did you know your face does that? She's like, no. And she wasn't just doing this. She was like doing this. Every time she talked, she would like lean back. And were you aware that your hands are doing this? Like, so I showed them back in real time what their bodies were doing. They were like, wow, I had no idea. I'm like, so no wonder your partner's responding to your nonverbals because you didn't even know what's happening in your system, like you're unaware. So that's a huge piece. And I think that's what we talked about in our previous podcast about knowing your partner, like knowing who your partner is, but also that word attunement, I think we used. So knowing who but knowing who yourself is. So knowing your attachment systems, knowing your triggers. So maybe, it could be, someone could come in the room and I think I have dogs in the room with me right now, as always, right? And maybe my dog bursts in the door because they're so happy and someone has attention, right? That's because of past memory. So lots of our arousal state in the moment, right, are based on past experiences. So it's so fast what's happening in our body that we're often unaware. Or your face reminds me of my father's or my teachers or that coach that yelled at me or whatever it is, right? So we're not going to unpack all that today, but just to be aware of what you just said actually links back to those past podcasts of knowing who your partner is, knowing your attachment systems, knowing your triggers, knowing why you have those, and then how to really respond with attention, with compassion. Of like, oh, I noticed seeing this, like you just said, I can imagine your client being in that office with you being like, yeah, my heart is doing this thing. I didn't actually recognize that. Or yeah, I'm clenching my jaw. Let me just give that a second, pay attention to my jaw with compassion, not like, God, I'm an idiot. Why would I do that? Right? Pause with compassion.
Yes.
Oh, recognize that.
It's just that awareness, right? I think that the starting point of regulation understanding is just awareness. Yep. And I remember early on, like starting to understand this, I did a thing for, I think about a month. I set an alarm on my phone twice a day, as just it would just go off. Yeah. And then it was just a tune in to remind me to be self-aware.
I love it.
What am I noticing right now? Where are my thoughts? Where is my emotion? Like, where do I feel in my body? And self-regulation or arousal is just being aware of your internal state of what's going on. Just an awareness.
That's a great technique. Anybody that's listening that wants to, practice this or learn more about this, set an alarm on your phone, like you just did, right? Or if you have a phone or Apple Watch or whatever your thing is. And in that moment, when it goes off, pause and be like, what's my state? What's my arousal state feeling like? And if you want to add another piece to it, what's happening in real time? What's happening in real time. So if I'm like, I'm feeling a little bit anxious or I'm noticing my body's this, right? You just make a mental note or in your phone, just put a little quick in the notes section of like, oh yeah, I was having a fight with my partner, or I was worried about going on stage to give that presentation, right? Or I was in immense joy because I'm on the boat with my kids and my son's surfing and it's like, or with you and it's the greatest day ever, right? I think it's really good information for tracking, what actually are your triggers if you're not very aware. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Totally. And if you're with somebody that you feel safe and secure with, whether that's a friend or your partner, whoever it is, let them know. So another kind of tick is to be able to communicate what that is. Hey, I notice like I'm really happy right now. I'm really enjoying this. Or I notice a part of me is feeling a bit stressed right now. I've suddenly started to think about this stressful thing that's going on in my life. And I'm letting you know, or I'm sharing it with you. Or if it has to do with you, I'm going to share that with you. So you're aware of what's going on for me. Maybe we're not going to talk about this right now, but I just want you to know in case you notice the shift in me. I suddenly just thought about that fight that we had the other day. Yeah. And so I'm coming back, but I just wanted you to be aware, and we'll talk about it later, but I am aware of my own internal state and what's going on, and I can communicate it to my people.
Yeah, man. How often do your kids ask you that? Do your kids ever notice when you're kind of not present or right? Kids are great at this. Like my kids are often like, I'll be at the dinner table or I'll be doing something, and also my brain goes to a client or that thing I need to finish or whatever. I'm thinking about something that's creating a bit of an arousal, and they'll be like, "What's wrong with you? Are you mad?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I was just sorry. I was thinking about this podcast, or I was thinking about this thing, or I was, some deadline, or usually it's like some report that I'm behind on or something like that." But they're so good at picking up those cues, and if we just minimize it, like nothing's wrong, right? Then we've just diminished their perception. They're actually tuning in to our state. I'd rather say, "Thanks. Yeah, sorry, I was actually not even paying attention to my nonverbals. I was someplace else in my head, but thanks for noticing. Wow, good attunement skills. Well done."
Yes, I know. I love that. You and I are the same way. We both do this with our kids and with our partners. And it is something that, if anything, if we can teach people, it's be connected enough with yourself to know what is going on. And when somebody tunes into it, don't instantly say, "I'm fine," and dismiss it, because this phrase, "I'm fine," is such a disconnecting, irritating phrase that we all do at times. We all do it. And so we're laughing because we're like, well, we've done this before, right? But
yeah, I have this client right now that I'm working with, this couple that I'm working with, and they're super avoidant. It's like they're hilarious. And if they'll probably watch us and laugh, but that's our joke. Whenever he says he's avoidant by nature, by attachment systems. And so the first time I met him, he had said, "I'm fine," like 15 times. And I'm like, "Okay, so from now on, when you say I'm fine, I'm going to take that as fuck off." He was like, and I was like, because that's what it means, right? And he was like, "Yeah, you're right. I actually never thought of that before." So now when he says it's fine, we all burst out laughing in the session, because it's like,
I love it.
It's automatic. It's his defense system. And he just says it because he's super avoidant. So it's fine. No, it's fine. So it's our joke now. So now they take it home.
I love it.
It's so great. Yeah. That we're fine.
And that's so good for couples to hear too, or just anybody in relationships. Find a way to be able to communicate and have fun with this as well. Like, oh, there's that avoidant part coming back up again. Fuck you, or whatever it is, like that is, again, it's connecting and it's not shaming. It's like, he's probably been programmed for so long to say that he's been so dismissive, right? Like, oh no, I just dismiss things. I dismiss, because in my family, nobody attuned to me. So I just don't acknowledge those kind of feelings. And it's not conscious. This is the other piece, right? Is our arousal is most of the time not conscious. Yeah. So you really have to slow down. If there's anything, like one thing that I know for me that I always try and remember is slow down. Like slow down, because when you get aroused, like there's hyper arousal or there's hypo arousal. And when you're hyper aroused at that heightened anxiety, anger, it's like, slow down, shoulders back, slow down, open your hands, slow down, take a breath.
Yeah, exactly. So okay. So now you said there's two things. There's the hyper and the hypo, right? We discussed briefly the window of tolerance last session, or last podcast, I guess, right? Yeah. So let's just open that door again. So window of tolerance is kind of a Dan Siegel visual, a great visual of this idea of regulation, right? Or arousal states, same idea. And so it's this, window or this box. Yes. And so hyper be you've left the window in the heightened end, and hypo be you've left the window in the vagal, or like depressed or dropped, or fawn. They call that fawning now, fawning end. So hyper is when, what you think of, like I'm impulsive and I'm quick and I'm defensive and I'm blaming and I'm pushing and I'm whatever, all those things. And hypo is maybe I'm dissociating. Maybe I'm avoiding.
The hypoarousal of the disconnecting, the shutting down, the pulling away.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so just knowing for you, what that feels like, and maybe having, again, keeping mental notes or notes on your phone or notes on in your journal, whatever it is, of what are my states of when I feel like I'm in that space. So when you're in that window of tolerance or that, arousal state, I think of like, again, Dan Siegel's work of like that upstairs, downstairs brain, right? So really having that, that good brain, that good, prefrontal cortex online, which is our social brain, which can adapt and pick up on cues and look around the environment and make decisions and stay engaged, that can actually get information from the amygdala. That's like, are we under threat? You're like, no, it's just a dog, or it's just this thing that can help you stay present, right? So having that frontal lobe, engagement, and feeling that downstairs brain, that limbic system where the amygdala lives, that's, having like a bit of a distressed state, but having enough frontal lobe activity to be like, I can regulate this. And we're going to give people a ton of techniques today of how to do that. But that's the piece of what is this thing we're calling self-regulation. It's knowing that regulated state for you and what that feels like, and then knowing how to bring it back online when it starts to get a little bit too noisy down here. Or when it gets really noisy, you need to take a break. So that's kind of,
and being aware of that when you notice that you are flipping your lid, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, I'm completely outside of that window of tolerance is really when both hemispheres of our brain are online, right? Where it feels like we're kind of in that, like I can think, like you said, and I can feel, and I can kind of manage both of these. But when we get into that hypoarousal or that hyperarousal, we're no longer in that window of tolerance. So now we're in an emotional state that kind of allows us either to flip our lid and go too high or shut down and disconnect. Exactly. So just being aware in your own body, I think of it kind of like a temperature gauge, like from, if 0 is I'm calm and I'm in the window of tolerance, but I can feel it going up. And once I get past 50, I'm not going to be able to have a conversation. So I have to be aware of that.
Yeah, exactly. And then another way to maybe conceptualize this idea to back on our other podcast is the idea of parts. And so that attunement piece of knowing the different parts of you. And so maybe I can pit it, my emotions are high. I can feel my emotions, or my logic is like asking 1,000 questions, right? Or my anxiety is present, and my anxiety is having a little bit of a panic attack inside here. So knowing what parts of you are having a dialogue and what they're needing in that moment in time. Like, do they need to take a break? Do they need, like, I know you're big on like body stuff, to like put your hand here. I'm like literally in real time fidgeting with my pen as I'm talking to you, like, right? So I always will have a fidget. Like yesterday I didn't have my necklace on, which I usually, so I had my little fidget ring, this little ring that like twists in a circle, like it just, right? And I play, it was literally $7. Like, this is how much this ring was. If anybody wants, you can order them on Amazon. I bought it from the farmer's market in Jaffrey, but that's something where you can recognize that, oh, my part needs this. And so knowing what your parts at different times, again, go back to those parts, having the committee meeting and knowing your parts and knowing their stories and knowing their whys and knowing, their whole little personalities of their experiences and their perceptions and their beliefs, all the stuff. And what does that little part need? I think another good way to conceptualize this too is, how would I treat somebody I loved? How would I treat my daughter, my son, my coworker, my friend, whatever? How would I treat somebody that I cared about when I see them starting to dysregulate? That's how I'm going to treat my parts.
Yeah.
And that's also going to treat, hopefully you, the person I'm with in real time.
Yeah. I love that, Alicia. I love that kind of, I like how you broke down the parts again too, to be like, if you're aware, you can plan and predict most times. Like, in what situations do you tend to get triggered? What are my emotional triggers that could come back from past traumas, or just, situations where I felt out of control in some way? So what does that look like? And what part is that? Well, that's the part that feels like it's maybe losing control. And so when I don't feel like I'm in control, I start to get really tense, and then I get really defensive. Or when I don't feel like I'm being understood, a part might be like, nobody understands me. Nobody ever gets me. Nobody's ever going to be there for me. Nobody ever is going to have my back. And that part takes over. And suddenly you're like, I don't actually think that all the time, but a part of me does. So understand those moments and those situations that can trigger that, and start to practice. What do I look like in those situations? How can I manage my part when it comes up? How can I self-regulate that part to be able to go, oh, there's that younger, like 10-year-old part that's getting upset because there's no control, and I'm aware of it. And I can maybe even communicate that to whoever I'm with. There's, hey, a part of me feels lots of sense of control here right now. So I'm just letting you know, I'm trying to regulate that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's our own individual work, right? So our own individual work of like, I carry these parts that, have past rejection, or like I said, past trauma, or feel out of control, or 1,000 things, right? So knowing you're doing your own work and then tuning into those things. And then you said, predict, prepare and predict, or plan and predict. So I know if I'm in the situation, I'm likely to be triggered because I know my triggers. And so what can I do ahead of time to start to practice and prepare for those things, like call on my resources, do some self-talk, there's 1,000 things you can do to take care of those parts prior to that trigger. Which is easy to do. Easy, air quote, easy, right? But easier than when you're in it and then you're hijacked and now you're in limbic brain and now you're fight or flighting.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And I think the other piece of it is after you have these situations, like say it's with a partner or a friend, it doesn't really matter, where maybe you shut down and you disconnect, or you get to hyperarousal and you're yelling, or you're, losing it in some sense. Slow down after and have a conversation and be like, hey, I noticed that this is what the trigger was. My belief is that you should do this thing for me. And you don't necessarily know that about me. You don't know that I have this thing, that it bothers me when you don't have my back in this situation. So now we can plan and predict. Next time we go to a restaurant, we can if something happens, like I get the wrong food, you know that this is my need. I really need you to validate me or to have my back. And then I won't get as aroused. Like that will make me feel seen and understood.
Yeah. And to not carry any shame, to be like, this is who I am. Sorry, I'm a pain in the ass. I'm kind of weird and whatever. And, when you do that thing, it's just really hard. So if you could do that a little differently. And if you're with a person that you care about, you're going to be like, okay, if it's not unreasonable, okay, I can do that for you. I can take care of you. It's also asking for what you need. Again, back to that self-attunement, paying attention to, I could take care of this myself and I will, and I'm an island and I'll take care of it all day long. Yeah. But if you want, if I could offer that to you sometimes, right? Knowing the difference between, like you said, correlation and self-regulation, it's going to create massive gratitude that I asked you for that thing, Dayna, and you did it. And I'm like, wow, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Because my fineness of I'm good, I got this, lock and load. You actually took your initiative to take care of me in that way. And that man, that's vulnerable for me to ask for that, which is self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many different layers we could pull apart in there, but.
Oh, there totally is. And I know, and I feel like to me, awareness or self-regulation, I think it's the hardest part about being a human, to be honest. Because I mean, just think of any phase in your life, anything new and challenging, there's dysregulation, right?
Yes.
I've got a new stress, I'm dysregulated. I have a new challenge, I'm dysregulated. Like it doesn't matter what it is. And some people term it differently too. Like I remember hearing somebody speak once, and they were talking about musicians who were going out on stage. And one musician was like, I get so nervous. My stomach goes into knots. I can feel my adrenal glands like shooting adrenaline. And like, I'm like so scared and so nervous. And then another singer describing the same thing, being like, I get so charged up and I'm so excited. And I can feel my adrenaline going and I can feel my stomach going in knots. And that's like, oh, we're excited. And just how different people can have the same physiological response, but have a new narrative of what does this mean to me? And what does this mean to you? It can be very similar, but similar response, but different narrative.
Absolutely. So I wanted to bring up her name today. So like that's a perfect intro for her. So Kelly McGonigal is a Stanford professor and a health psychologist. And I watched her her TED Talks and videos for a long time. And she actually says, like recently, she used to say, how stress is bad for her body. That's kind of what we all say. So one of her colleagues, actually, Robert Sapolsky, who also works at Stanford, wrote the book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And so it's literally like why animals don't carry long-term stress. Like something happens, I'll take a horse out of one of the pen, and so the herd or the horses that are left behind are unhappy. They're distressed. And so they're running around and they're mad and they're distressed, but bring the herd back together and they like shake it off pretty quick. And they have usually a little kicking and bucking and they do their thing, but then they shake it off. And 10 minutes later, they're not carrying that stress, where humans carry that stress of like, remember that time last week or last year or 10 years ago when that boss did that thing and you're still carrying that. Like, I'm like, that makes no sense. Animals think we're crazy. Like my dog would be like, why are you carrying that in your body? That makes no sense. Shake it off. Literally just shake it off. And so Kelly's new work, in her new book, Upside of Stress, she talks about that. She talks about exactly what you just said, that it's not inherently the stress in and of itself, like the outside things aren't inherently what's going to cause us long-term damage. It's our mindset, our perception.
Yes.
And so exactly what you just described with the singers, the musicians, the idea of if I look at the situation and I pause and go, I'm excited. This is good nerves. I'm an athlete and I got to go play in this massive game and I can feel my adrenaline and that's going to make my muscles stronger, make me run faster. Can I switch my mindset to, I'm not terrified, I'm excited. Even just try that. Even just try to change your words. So that's like some CBT stuff, like some cognitive behavioral, shifting your thinking and how you're behaving in the moment. To how you're looking at the idea of stress. So those are two great authors to look up at Stanford that both have really good research and books on stress and different ways of looking at stress.
Yeah, that's really good, Leash. I love that. I love that how you just described that. And that awareness, I feel like, to me, I guess it goes back to parts a little bit too, but when there's an emotion that comes up that's uncomfortable. So I'm understanding that I'm feeling a bit dysregulated. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's anger. It doesn't even matter what it is, but being aware of that and letting that kind of flow through and not holding on to a narrative around this, that I have to be stuck in this. Because it's like, you're going to move through emotions and you're going to move through kind of bodily sensations and somatic stuff, but just don't hold it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, for somebody like me who's navigating some grief stuff too, like, I'm like, I want to feel, but I don't want to live there. And so I'm like, so I can feel it in my body and I let my body feel it. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm going to sit here and feel this, but I'm going to let it flow through me. I'm not going to hold tight. And so switching, I feel like a little bit of a narrative around that, but also understanding that my body is going to feel things sometimes. And I have to let it move through me. I can't control that. There is no control over what triggers you. Like, people often will say that, right? I just want to get rid of my triggers. And well, we can't really get rid of your triggers. You can change the way you respond though to your triggers, because you start to shift your narrative, your mindfulness around that. And you know,
over
you
time,
learn how to
triggers, over time, their triggers get a little smaller because of that action. So what you're describing right now, you know, with the grief with your dad that's going on in your life, I like that, you know, that's so important. We discussed this again before, the idea of like, you know, emotions being like a wave. They're sometimes they're tsunamis and they like hit you hard and you are, you know, obliterated by this wave. And sometimes they're just little ripples on the, you know, the ocean. They're just little waves. So pausing and being like, emotion is in our body. It's literally in our body. So you can pay attention to where are my feelings right now. It's in my hands, it's in my jaw, it's in my legs. Where am I feeling this? And knowing that it's going to pass. So can I just make the space to let this emotion come in and out right now? If I can, if I'm in a time and space that I can do that. If I can't, if I'm in the middle of a meeting or I'm in the middle and I got to pause, can I tell myself, you know, I have this like little inner therapist, you know, voice in my head that I'm like, hey, right now I can't do this right now, but we'll come back to it. We're going to set up a meeting later on tonight. We're going to take care of this. And it's going to be a place to like, let that come in and out, to like, let it pass through you. So I love that idea of the body sensations of letting it come through. But then you also mentioned again, the mindset shift. So in real time, 2 techniques you can apply is that body sensation of letting it pass through you or letting it flow through you or whatever visualize works for you, knowing that it's going to pass, because we talked about this before. You know, most emotions don't last very long, a few seconds to a few minutes. I mean, 20 minutes is a long time for like in rage maybe, or like something really big. And it also then helps us to validate them in real time that I'm having this feeling. And maybe the feelings aren't logical. Who said feelings were logical? Nobody ever. They're not logical. They just are. And so just let them come in and out and make space. And then the second piece of that puzzle is then using then your frontal lobes, right? The cerebral cortex to be like, oh, so what might this mean? Or what might this mean later? Or what else could this mean? So grief is like, oh, I'm just feeling this intense wave of grief, which is just like a, you know, I think of grief as just like one of those, I don't know, those like when the water swirls around, what's that called? When the water goes like this and you get pulled into the spiral of the water, you know, that thing? The whirlpool.
Well, tornado is what's coming to my mind, but I know what you're trying to
say.
Tornado.
I visualize that as like water spiraling around you, then this whirlpool, and then it spits you out, and then it sucks you back in sometimes. And sometimes you're out and you're like, oh, I'm good. And then you're like just getting them back in it again. So that's kind of what the feeling of grief feels like. But then the cognitive piece after, when you have the clarity to be like, oh, but the whirlpool or the tornado, the bigger feelings in my body are just really is just the receipt that I've loved. Like grief is love. Yeah. That's what grief is. Yeah. And so I'm literally just feeling love. And can I make space and capacity to have that mindset shift of, I'm going to be in it. It's not going to feel great in my body, but I also know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think that awareness of that. And then for me, I noticed that I also balanced it with, like, I know that where I focus, my energy goes. So there's a part of me that also is like, focus on the gratitude, focus on all of the good in the moment right now or in my life. And so then I can feel that also. So I don't have to live in, like, say, grief. Because I know you were saying a few minutes ago that we don't stay in emotions for that long, right? Maybe like max 20 minutes, but some people get really entrenched in depression and they live there for years. And so they're like, well, no, I've been living in this for a long time. But that's the focus. That's where we need to, I mean, ultimately, if we're talking about depression, we need to be connecting with people, right? I mean, that's the way that we kind of move through that.
Right.
So, you know,
whole nother big topic for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. But the idea of making space for those feelings, and then doing the things that you said. So reaching out, connection is another way to, you know, self-regulate, possibly, if that's your thing, is to connect. But most of us, we're social beings. We need to connect somewhere. When I think of connection, my first connection, people for sure, but I'm not as people-y as you. I'm avoidant. I connect to like my animals. Like one of my favorite ways to self-regulate is to, when I've had a day, or even if I can every day in between clients, I like literally in my little bare feet, like right now I got bare feet on here. I wear bare feet. I don't wear shoes or socks very often. And I'm lucky I live in the country. So I can just go outside, put my feet in the dirt. And then while I'm outside, I have
Yeah.
one horse in particular. I love all my horses, but there's one that she just smells really good. And I did a podcast, a little Instagram live on her a long time ago. And I was just like, am I the only one in the world that smells a horse and feels good? Like this regular, I can just smell her. I can right now imagine her smell. Right. And so I can use imagination. So so there's all these techniques you can use, but then if you're literally in an office or stuck in a moment where you can't go outside I can right now, as I'm talking to you, remember her smell, and I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in my nose. I can feel it in my chest. I'm like, I can see her face. And then I'm having all the body experiences as if I'm smelling that horse right now. So I have this thing called imagination that I can also rely on at any time as another technique to practice self-regulation. What we're doing essentially, right? What we're doing, is using that like vagus nerve stuff for creating it's like having a good bicep. I got to work out this bicep to have a strong bicep. Clearly I don't. Yeah. So, right. But I work out my vagus nerve. I got a good vagal tone. Yeah. Right. So what can we do as a workout for our vagus nerve, for the vagal tone, for the parasympathetic tone in our body? Because sympathetic is that fight flight. And then, sympathetic is fight or flight. And then parasympathetic is like that rest digest system. Calming. Yeah. So how do I work out that system when it's rest and digest? I do things that are resting. I do things that are that trigger those senses to have that parasympathetic feeling, like smelling my horse.
Yes. Well, yeah. And you said earlier, I think it's funny how you said, I'm more social than you. I'm like, yeah, right. Bullshit. You call me when you're dysregulated, when you need to be calmed down.
I have small people in my life. A small list. Yeah.
I'm small. I'm just kidding.
I did a Brene Brown one time. I did a Brene Brown connections. I taught her a connections class for a long time, and I did one of her classes. And she gave us an assignment of it was like a who's earned the right to be in that heart center, and we drew a little heart, and we had to put our names in there. And I'm like, there's literally 2 people in my heart. I'm like, wow, that's it. Like it's a small space.
You just triggered. I just found my journal. Emma and my daughter and I did one of her courses, and I found on it, one of the pages was a heart, and it had people's names in it, and I couldn't understand. I couldn't remember what that was.
I gave her that.
You. Now I know what that is.
Yes. I'm like, who is in your circle that you can go to that's in your heart space that you can reach out to when you're really in distress? Yes. And it's an earned space. It's who do you trust that can you be totally vulnerable with? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have all the animals in there. Only 2.
Yeah. I think for me, and I think for everybody actually, and a lot of people listening will be like, no, that's not me. Yeah. Each to their own, but connection heals. So connecting when we're dysregulated, when we're in kind of an aroused state or a hypo-aroused state where we're feeling shut down and disconnected, you need to connect. So whether that is connecting with people or nature, or yourself through yoga or meditation, you need to plug back in and connect. That is like number one. Yeah. And these are the things. I have a list. I usually have a list on my phone of like, what do I do when I'm dysregulated? And I have a playlist, a musical playlist that is I'm dysregulated. I put on that playlist. I'll go for a walk and I will listen to it, or a drive, whatever it is. But knowing what your shifting
do you have rap on your list?
Yeah. I got regulators.
Of course.
I have some good old ones of Britney. It's a good mix of country and rap, and
I love it.
Yeah. You know me.
I can't listen to a rap song without thinking about you. I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah. And it's memory based, right? I mean, for me, it's not the language that they're saying. There's a memory of feeling young and free and relaxed. And so that association is some rap music, not all rap music by any means.
I got some cheesy old like John Denver on mine, some country roads and
Oh, yes, you do. I could see that. I could probably put together your playlist.
Right. Exactly. And Tuman, how well do we know each other?
Yeah, totally. And I think the goal of even this episode partly is to start to understand who are you and what are some of those things that you can do when you are triggered, when you are dysregulated. What can you do to bring your arousal down? Yeah. So you've said for you, Alicia, I've said a couple of mine, music, you said horses, calling a friend, connecting. What are some other things that you do that help you regulate yourself?
So in the moment, I have different ones, but I think my practices of regulation on a regular basis, which I'm a big proponent of, I really think it's important to practice these skills before you need them. Just like anything in life, practice something before you need to jump in the lake and not drown. So I'm a big fan, of course, as you know, of mindfulness. So I'm
Yeah.
back to using them. I kind of go back and forth with my mindfulness techniques, but I'm back to using like an app that's just like a guided meditation with music. I was really into binary beats, kind of over the summer. But yeah, so I really like meditation as a way to practice that tone. It sets my day up. If I can meditate in the morning, put my headphones in, if I can sneak in 10 minutes or whatever I got, like ideally 20 to 30 minutes I like to do, but if I can sneak in. I also recently, thanks to you, probably have been doing the cold shower thing. It's a system.
Cold
Even
plunge.
like when we were in the lake the other day, I'm like, okay, nervous system reset. Let's just not think about it. Get in, just gotta, right?
Yes.
Because I'm the person, I don't like cold. Like I like heat. And so for me, that's a force. But if I just like, I like the idea. I think it was you that said to me, like, don't, who's in charge of this body? Like, just do it. Like, don't think about it.
Yeah.
I'm in charge. You're going to, hey body, we're not going to die. You're going to do what I say. And then it resets and it's like, okay, it's pretty empowering. And then you feel those endorphins throughout the day. So I've been doing those two things a lot. Meditation I've been doing for a lot longer, obviously. And the cold shower. Yeah. And if I'm at the lake, obviously I'm going to jump in the lake. It's going to be a cold, lake or something. Yeah. No, I'm going to order I think, an ice bath. I'm going to be looking at them. I think me too. Yeah. If someone's listening to this and has some good suggestions, I would love to hear what you guys think. I've been looking just on like online for a little ice bath, but I think I'm going to order an ice bath and just have it in the bathroom or wherever, so I can jump in the ice bath. I think those are two things for me to really practice that vagal tone. And then in real time, we're therapists. So we're in offices with people that are dysregulated most of the time. They come in or they start telling their stories and they quickly get dysregulated in our offices. So in my office, I think I use a couple of techniques. I'm a fidgeter, like I'm fidgeting with something at all times. Like I have this pen in my hand or my beads in my neck, as I know you do with your necklaces and stuff. But I also practice, I learned this early on in my career. I think working in the jail system. So I'm working with pretty dysregulated individuals. And it was, I think Comrade said it, but Stan says this all the time, content, second, third, fourth. Because we get caught in their content, into their story, and then I'm going to feel dysregulated too. So I'll pause and pay attention to like, what's their face doing? Oh, let me look at their hands. Like I'll actually use my curiosity as a way to regulate. I'm going to be curious about what else is happening. And even if I do that in real time, I'm all of a sudden out of their content and I'm watching their body and I'm watching her body or his body. I pay attention to the nonverbal cues. And when I'm in curious, I can't be in dysregulation for me. It's a huge technique that I use a lot. Yeah. That's so good. I mean, just, and then you're back in real time again. Right. And I think the thing with being dysregulated, whether it's hypo or hyper aroused, you're in your head. Right. Yeah. I mean, you're in a perception, you're in a memory, you're in something, you're not in real time, likely, unless you are in threat. Obviously, if you're running from somebody chasing you, this is very different. But for the most part, most of the time it's these stories or these traumas or these narratives that we've told ourselves for so long that is making us, in this aroused state. Yeah. And even if you can do that, if you're really skillful and you can do what you just said in real time, once in a while I can hear something or experience and then hear my part get aroused. And I can in real time in my head be like, I hear you. I got you. Like, you're okay, but I'm gonna still stay here. Like, so I can be that metacognitive moment where I'm paying attention to my thoughts or my arousal parts of me that are getting aroused and soothe them in my head. If I'm with someone, I can say out loud, be like, oh, I can feel this part. Like if I'm public speaking, I'll be like, oh, I can feel part of me wants to, what part of me is nervous. Like if my body's, sweaty or whatever, but I'm still present here. So if I can name it out loud, great. But if I can name it in my head, I still got to name it. I think naming it's another great technique. That's it. Name it to tame it. Well, yep. And you're tuning to a part, right? It's no different than if it was a kid. I think of parts as like a kid, right? If a kid is like, hey, if you acknowledge it and be like, hey, just give me a minute, I'm going to come back to you. Sending you love, validation, all of that stuff, then they do settle, our parts settle the same as a child will settle or your partner will settle when you acknowledge them and validate them. Yeah. Yeah. One of my ego parts in session and therapy that I have to tame lots is the part that wants to jump in and say stuff. Did you see that? Like I'm saying to myself, did you see that? Did you catch that? And I'm like, because my ego's like, I know what that was. I know how to fix that. And I got to pause and be like, let it go by. I say that to myself 1,000 times in a session, like let it go by until I reinforce that belief 10 more times before I'm going to intervene. Like, let me hear it again. Let me see it again. Don't assume, because that's an ego, right? That's like, I got this. I know what that is. Yeah. So so I do that a lot in real time too. I think when I'm in a decent state, I can do that pretty good in real time. Otherwise, curiosity. My default mode is like, if I'm getting aroused a little bit, curiosity, go full blown curiosity. What is that? What's happening? Yeah. And I like that you just said that.
Yeah, I like what you just said about the ego, Alicia, because people can resonate with that too. We all have an ego, right? So our ego is like a wonderful part of us, but it also is often quite self-righteous and, thinks that it can do anything and knows everything correctly. And in a partnership or in any kind of relationship, it's not often true.
Yeah.
So being aware of that and being like, oh, there's my ego. Okay, I'm going to slow that down a little bit. That's also self-regulating, right? I'm acknowledging that that's my ego. I'm sending it some positive vibes, some love, some validation, but I'm going to make space so I can come back into my authentic self or my self energy. So I can be aware of that and I can manage those parts.
My ego has like a sticky note board in the back of my head. So it's like, I'm like, good, put it on the board. Good. You might be right. Put that on the board for later.
Put it on the board. I love that. Put it on the board for later.
I'm such a visual. If I vibrate visually, everything is visual. So everything has a visual to me, but ego has a, and there's like pink sticky notes. I can totally see my noteboard behind my head at all times.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. A couple of different things I want to say. One other thing that I do, if I'm in a place where I can sit down, I will lower my body. So that's one way that I self-regulate is I just lower my body. So my kids and my husband know that if I sit on the ground, I'm likely self-regulating in some way. And then I'll bring them in when I'm ready or lay starfish on a bed.
Yeah. I think kids do that too. I think kids like to get on the ground and lay down. I ever see a kid just like lay on their back. And actually when we meditate, like I like to sit obviously, but if I can lay down flat outside, on a yoga mat or even on my kitchen floor, I would do that too. That feels better. So there's something about laying on the ground. Well, there's something about the earth, right? I think there's some good research. I should look up that guy. I keep seeing him on Instagram about grounding your feet on the earth and how it changes your electricity in your body. And there's something about just being flat on the earth and feeling supported by earth's energy that's so profound.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I could go outside and sit on grass or put my feet in the ground, like you're saying, I mean, that would be my first pick to do that if that's possible. Sometimes in the winter months, it's too cold to do that. But
or maybe
and another thing.
I was going to say, for the ground, maybe if you're in the city, if you can't go outside, bring something with you. Like literally behind me, you can see it behind right here. This is wood that I collected from BC. So maybe you bring in a piece of this wood, to your house or into your office or wherever, and you just have that sitting there. So this is your reminder of like, right, this is my grounding. Or maybe it's rocks you like, or maybe it's a sand tree that you like, having some kind of earth around you that can remind you of grounding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know I've even had clients who have been like, I wash my hands. Just the sound of water and the feel of water gets me back into like, and it's soothing. So it could be water. And another
warm
thing
water, cold water. Feel what it feels best for your hands. Try that. It's a good one.
Yeah. And another kind of mindfulness thing, Leash, that I've kind of done a little bit more recently. So this is a newer practice for me, but I have a journal beside my bed. And before I'm going to sleep, I write a couple things of like kind of what I'm wanting to accomplish or what I'm like, it might just be like, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm free, I'm in joy, I'm in gratitude. And then, I mean, there's that last 5 minutes before you go to bed, you're opening up to your subconscious mind. And so all of that programming can happen before bed. And I noticed I've only been doing this for about 7 days and I've noticed a difference already of when I wake up. I'm like I feel like I've processed that in some way. So it's a newer practice. So I can't speak for how long it works, but so far it's felt really good.
Okay. That's a great challenge. If you're listening to this, I challenge you, double dog dare y'all, to try some I am. I mean, I am statements are researched. What they say comes after I am defines your life. So some I am statements before bed. And so even the things you're struggling with that, so if you feel like I'm out of control or I'm misunderstood or I'm never validated or no one ever gets me, try those. I am understood. I am validated. I am worth.
I
am love. Try some of those things, put those statements out and like resonate in your body. Feel those feelings. Feel those words, digest those words, digest the energy of those words, and then fall asleep. Let's try it. Let's try a challenge. I'll do it tonight.
Yeah. And also read it in the morning. So when you wake up for that first 5 minutes, open it and look at it and same thing, Leash, feel it in your body, kind of visualize this. This is who I am. I am creating the person I want to become rather than being the person that I once was or that a part of me is holding on to an energy or a narrative of. You get to create your life. And I think that even arousal wise, you get to create it. And I think I know, like working with you, you've been a mentor of mine as well. And watching sometimes the way that you'll take on a stress or a situation, that now becomes a memory for me. I'm like, oh, I can do it that way. And so just start to watch and start to practice that in your mental kind of just visualization, just being like, I can do that too. I can see myself relaxing. I can see myself moving my body like the way that that person does, that moves the energy through me. So practicing and visualizing it and feeling it in your body, you're creating that new memory that hasn't happened yet, maybe, but you're putting it out there. And then when you get there, it's a lot easier to self-regulate when you have that memory.
Exactly. And like, it goes back to what you said earlier, what I focus on is what I feel. And so
yes,
fair enough that you have complaints and you have, experiences and you have distresses that you want to bring to the table and resolve. But if you keep doing the same talk, if you keep just dancing in that same space of like, this is still distressing, rather than what is it that I want? I'm going to actually I'm going to manifest that, which manifesting means I'm going to create that. I'm going to focus on it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to say it. I'm going to speak it. Like even with Chantel's cancer recently, she's like, she's been feeling super sick. And now she's like, I'm a healthy person. My cells are healthy. I keep pounding. I'm like, quit saying you're sick. You're not a sick person. Your cells are beautiful. And so she's been changing her like verbs to say I'm a healthy person. Right. So so you feel what you say, what you focus on is what you feel. And so be mindful of that. Like, let your words matter. Let your thoughts, if your thoughts change the energy, the perceptions of what you see and experience, but also they change the chemicals in your body, they matter a lot.
Yes.
So be really mindful of the thoughts you think up here. They matter a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I love that too. That's every cell in your body is always listening. So what you tell yourself, you become. If you aren't already it, you are becoming it based on what you're telling yourself.
Yeah. Think of your cells like kids. We're bad. They're like, okay. We're healthy. They're like, okay,
we're bad.
Okay. Okay. We'll listen to you. You're the boss.
Yeah. And I feel like that always sounds like a woo-woo kind of thing for people to be like, okay, so tell myself how I want to be. That sounds like so, I don't know. A lot of people don't resonate with it right away, but if you practice it for a week and then you come back, you will figure out that it actually, it's no different than the placebo effect, right? I mean, they've done studies after studies after studies, and antidepressants actually are not what's working. It's the belief that it's working. Or surgeries. Like I remember I was telling my dad recently about this one where they had 3 different groups of people. One person was in a cast. One group of people were in a cast. Another group was also in a cast, and another group was not in the cast. And each of them had different things that they had to follow. So the person that was in the cast, they were to do nothing but visualize building strength. So don't move your hand, just visualize building the strength. So you're moving your hand, you're getting stronger, you can see it, you can feel it. So theirs was all visualization and feeling it in their body. The next group that was in the cast, they had to do the exercise. So do the exercise, try and do it with the cast on, try and build the strength. And then the other group that had no cast on, they got to just do the exercise as much as they could to build that strength. So they had the most mobility to be able to build the strength. And at the end of the study, the group that was in the cast that only visualized and felt it in their body were actually stronger than the other 2 groups.
Wow, that's amazing.
Crazy, hey?
Amazing.
It's like you literally are putting out there what you want to become. So for me, that just goes back to, again, self-regulation around see how you want to respond. You need to visualize that. You need to know your body well enough to know, what does my face do? What does my throat do? What does my heart do? What does my stomach do? Where are my shoulders? How fast or slow am I talking? If you can see that and you're creating a memory around that, that is who you will become. But that self-awareness and taking accountability is a massive part.
Yeah, huge. We've talked about that lots in the last one, accountability being huge for sure. So those are some great take-homes and techniques for people to pay attention, know what your body needs, but to pay attention to what is it that you actually want? Like, how do you actually want to feel? That's that really, we can just give them that quick hack. I mean, it was a hack that I learned from one of Drew's hockey coaches or hockey psychologist a long time ago, but Tony Robbins kind of like has the same one. It's that triangle that he does, Tony Robbins triangle. Have you seen that one? So it's basically put in the middle of the triangle, the word of what is the state you want to be in right now. So just draw a triangle on your page, put in the middle of the triangle, a state that you want to be in. So maybe you put in the word, I don't know, calm, or maybe you put the word joy. It doesn't matter whatever state you want to be in, or maybe you want to be like strong as you're going on to play this sport you have to do, or you want to be fast, whatever, pick a word, doesn't matter what word. And then around the triangle, you put these 3 ways to get to that state. So one is, your behavior. And so what does your body look like? So body behavior, when you're, how are you walking? How do you hold your body? What's your face look like? All the ways you're holding your body, your behavior looks like when you're in that state. So when I'm in calm, I'm like, I feel my yogi self coming on. Everything gets calm. My muscles relax. When I'm in strength, I'm going to go out there and have to, like, maybe I'm a boxer. Then I'm going to walk with, like, my hands ready and my muscles tight, and I'm going to be upright. I'm going to be confident. I'm going to walk confident. Right. And then the second part of the triangle is language. What is your language? And not just what you say, right? How you say it. How much air is in your voice? What's the prosody of your voice? What's the tone of your voice? All the different ways your voice, right? The music in your voice, not even the words, all the ways you use your voice, the hum in your voice, like all the things you want to do. So if you're calm, I might hum, I might just hum, or I might for calm. If I'm like, if I'm going to be a boxer again, I might walk out there and be like jamming and like singing, and, my voice might be like louder and choppier and whatever. And what's that guy? Robert Love, I think, is the guy's name. That's the voice coach. You can Google his stuff.
Oh, yes. Roger Love.
Roger Love. Thank you. Yeah. And then the third part of that triangle is the focus, essentially, like the Buddha focus, like what you feel is what you focus on is what you feel. Right. And so every sport knows that. Every sport knows, right? I coached soccer for 100 years, 100 years, a long time. And I swear to my little girls, I'm coaching these kids, and I'm like, what are you going to look at when you're shooting the ball? Where are you going to look? They're all like, at the goal. I'm like, but not at the goalie. Because if you look at the goalie, you hit the goalie with that ball. Focus on the back of the net, like focus on the corner of the net. And every time they look at the goalie, they'd hit the goalie. Like 9 times out of 10, they'd hit the goalie. But if you look at the back of the net, guess where the ball's going to go? It's a massive net and a little tiny kid in the middle of the net. Like, you have a lot of space to score that, that soccer goal. So where you focus, energy flows. So every sport knows this. Like NASCAR drivers know this. Formula 1 drivers know this. Like, focus on, because their sport actually is so fast the brain can't keep up. So they have to visualize. So that's the whole visualization piece, is the focus piece. So it's a quick little hack that you can, it's a great hack that you can use. What do you want to feel? What state do you want to be in? Use those 3 things to hijack that system in the moment in time. Yeah. So you can regulate. That's great. You can choose. Right now, I want to be in this state. Okay, what are 3 things I can do really fast? Even if I just do one of those things, I want to be in this state. Like right now, I want to be confident. Switch your body to be confident. All of a sudden, I sit up straight. Right, my voice gets a little calmer, like a little clearer. Right, I want to be calm. Oh, I relax. Yeah, everything relax. Yes, my face. And
there's research with that too, right, Alicia, around like body posturing, right?
Yeah, that's Amy Cuddy's
even
work.
Just standing with your hands on your hips and your shoulders back for, I think it's like 2 minutes. It's not even long. You release like 80% more testosterone in your body. So it is. And I always think of that too. This is Michael Singer's stuff of like from the Untethered Soul of, shoulders back, like shoulders back, and let things flow through you. So like to be so aware of your body, to go, this is how I want to process. This is how I want to move through emotions or life or whatever it is. I'm focusing on that. Like you said, where you focus, your energy goes.
You're going to feel it. Yeah. So the body posturing, that's Amy Cuddy from Harvard. That's her work. Yeah. And I think the mindset stuff too, that's Carol Dweck's work, and she's at Harvard, I think, as well. So lots of authors are giving you today, if you're interested in this stuff. Self-regulation, we call it like a master skill. It's a master skill. Yeah. It's a skill that affects relationships with everything in your life, including yourself. Because if you're dysregulated, you can't receive information. You're actually going to code information differently because you're in a state of arousal. So your hippocampus is kind of offline, and it's going to code information, in that state. So it's good for, it's good. This self-regulation is good if you're a student. It's how you study your test. You have to be in that same state to do your test the next day or whenever your test is.
Exactly.
So it's a massive master skill for every relationship area in your entire life. So don't think you're going to listen to this podcast and master it in one day, but here's a bunch of authors and ideas to get the ball rolling.
Yes. And I don't know the research off the top of my head, but your arousal state is predictive of also a lot of health concerns, right? So people who are in a dysregulated state a lot of the time, a lot of stress, bad stress, tend to have a lot of stomach problems and autoimmune also. I mean, lots of that has to do with trauma and stuff too, but it is like, we can't change our history. We can rewrite it with our narratives, but we can't change it. So in the moment now, how are you taking care of yourself? And maybe just one last piece I want to say too, Alicia, that we didn't really touch on is just even the self-care around arousal. Like, what are you putting in your body? Some people, I don't get affected by coffee. You do. I know you Yeah. See, it calms me down and it hypes you up.
Yeah. Makes me
right.
Like
But yeah. And so I know for me, like I love Organifi, and that's like, I use a lot of their products, and a lot of their products kind of help keep me regulated as well. Just having greens and having, some of the red stuff that they have, like you have to know what you're putting in your body, because that's also, alcohol is going to affect your arousal. Drugs, massively going to affect prescription drugs.
Yes. Testosterone
everything.
drugs, like all those drugs are going to affect your ability to stay in that healthy arousal space. Those are big ones.
Yes.
So if you're having trouble regulating, look at all those factors. Be like, man, I do seem to be impulsive. I do, seem to be, and again, you said this before, the emotion matches the situation, right? So if you're being chased by a lion, you're going to have massive motion, probably. Fight, flight, or freeze is going to be kind of normal in that situation. So, but if you're in traffic and having a fight, flight, or freeze response, having a massive arousal state, probably not, mirroring the actual situation that you're in. So you're probably out of that arousal state for some other reason. So look at, again, there's a lot other reasons to talk about, like trauma and past histories, but also, nutrition. What did you feed your body today? How much did you sleep today? How much caffeine did you have today? What drugs are you taking that might affect that?
Yes.
Right. What supplements are you taking that might affect that?
It definitely. And for couples out there, I mean, this is really what our couples come in with, right? Is for the most part, communication and dysregulation problems. So if you have a partner, or you or yourself have a problem with marijuana or alcohol or steroids or prescription drugs or painkillers or anything, know that now it's the same techniques that we're talking about aren't going to work the same way. Like you may have to talk to a specialist and a doctor, because that's why for us, right, as clinicians, as psychologists, when somebody comes in and says, I've got an addiction too, now suddenly we've shifted our whole approach and our treatment plan of like, okay, well, now I can't do some of the regular things I do with you, because that's going to contradict, like we can't control that, because the substance is way stronger than the mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes. Depends what the substance is, but it can be for sure. For sure. Yeah. So that's like an outlier. So we're giving you all these kind of techniques and things to try. Yeah. But be aware of those things too. So if you're with your partner and you're like, this isn't working, be like, maybe ask other questions. Like, what else could be contributing to this inability for us to stay regulated in our conversations? Like, what else could, and ask yourself that, what else could it be for me? If I had too much caffeine today, I'm jittery. I'm like, right. Yeah. I had an extra chai tea latte at Starbucks. That's why I'm kind of jittery or whatever. So that might be contributing to my lack of being able to listen and pay attention.
Totally.
I'm a one coffee a day girl, or one caffeine drink a day. That's it.
Yeah. So different. I think, as like a lead up maybe to another podcast that we will do maybe next even, is talking about co-regulation. Because I know we didn't really get a chance to really talk much about that. And that's a whole other massive topic, but how to regulate your partner and how to understand kind of who you're dealing with. So I know we've touched on it in different times, but maybe we'll tap more into that in another podcast of just how to co-regulate your partner. Yeah.
Because when that happens in real time, like in our offices, it feels like sweetness, right? When it happens in real time and it's a safe, secure space you've created, and you look at your partner, you're like, take care of that. And they do with each other, the air shifts in the room. You just feel this like landing in security, and you're like, it feels so good for them. And you can feel it in the room. My dogs even will like, they'll sigh in the room when that happens.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing when it happens. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. That'll be a good one to chat about.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So lots of take homes, lots of ideas. Go smell your animals, smell your kids, maybe smell your babies, right? If that's smell thing for you. Well, they say smell is one of the fastest things to go into our nervous system, because it has a direct link for some reason, faster than eyes. Obviously all of our senses. Yes. So you can use, even if you're slightly dysregulated and you're looking for another way to calm down, use your senses. So like, what can I see? Yeah. What can I touch? What can I taste? What can I smell? What can I hear?
Yes.
And how many things can I count in those areas if you want? Those are some like pretty common techniques. And then all the other ones we talked about today, all the other techniques that we've used, hopefully is to create muscle memory of that vagal kind of tone in our body, but also in real time, you're trying to feel yourself get dysregulated. And I really like the idea of setting the alarm, paying attention in time and space to be like, okay, what's happening in my body? Just randomly, what's happening right now? And what am I doing? It's going to give you really good data, because you're like, I really don't know. This is going to give you good data to be like, actually, I've been keeping kind of this data for the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I recognize that when I'm in joy, I tend to do these things. And when I'm in stress, this is what I'm doing. So now I have a
Yeah.
list of things I can do to bring me to joy. And
Yes.
that thing called imagination. We can use our imagination to bring us to joy or a different state right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
That's
our
awesome.
triangle hack.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of good take homes. And I just wanted to piggyback one thing you said, Leish, just for people to know, our smell is also something that we have no control over. So if you are triggered by a smell that is like disgust, these are kind of things that we can't really change.
Yeah.
So that's
They go
that,
deep.
because I've had that with couples before where they've had an issue around, I mean, this is very rare, but issues around a smell, possibly even with their partner, where they can't change that. So,
Yeah.
Understanding your partner, I mean, that's another big piece of it, right? Like what are your triggers for self-regulation? What dysregulates you? And maybe another take home, just as a little thing to really be self-aware of, is what are the things that dysregulate you? Like make a little list of things that you notice dysregulate you, and then make a list of the things that can kind of calm your nervous system. What will bring your arousal down? So you know your list and you know what calms you. And if you have a partner, share that with your partner. It's really good information.
Yeah. If you're not sure what's dysregulation, when are you blaming? When are you projecting? When are you defending? Those are just little hints to know that you're a little bit dysregulated, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. And you're usually a little bit self-righteous.
Yeah.
And you're just really focused on yourself.
Yeah. We never do that.
No, not as humans for sure.
Oh, we're so complex. So fun. Awesome. Okay. Self-regulation 101. There you go.
This was fun.
See
you again next time.
All right. See you soon.
Bye. Thanks so much for joining us.
We're really glad you're here with us on this journey.
The best way to support this podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
See you next time.
This has been a Bread Dog Studios production.